We've seen many takes on the web crawler, but the very first one to ever do it was the 1977 The Amazing Spider-Man series. It started out with a pilot film simply titled Spider-Man, airing on the CBS network, starring Nicholas Hammond as the timeless webbed menace. This was Spidey's first debut on the global movie stage, and it was a hit too. The series got split into 2 seasons spanning 13 episodes. Nicholas Hammond nailed the quirky boy-across-the-street goofiness of Peter Parker down to a T, but a lot of fans had some complaints about his Spider-Man. The bulk of it was just that Peter wasn't really that active with his quips. He pretty much made quipping cool.
Well, I guess I can see your point of view. Can you now?
But besides that, fans also complained about a distinct lack of villains from the main comic lines. There weren't any Sinister Sixes, no Doc Ock, no Venom, but you did get an original new character, Guru. The plot of the movie followed a standard Spider-Man format. He gets bit by a radioactive spider in a lab experiment, and you know the rest. Except, this was also the only Spidey movie to never introduce Uncle Ben, even though it had Aunt May. The movie follows Guru as he threatens to make 10 New Yorkers commit suicide with his powers of hypnosis, and Peter was one of the 10. But with that classic iron will of his, he managed to break out. It's cliché as far as stories go, but it was regarded pretty highly for its stunt work, which took over 2 days to film and required, a lot of rigging. Back then, it was considered severely dangerous. As far as the stunt work and the use of his devices went, it was pretty good, being the only film ever to showcase the spider trackers in action. All in all, it was a film filled with charm, though obviously dated. Still, it gave the Spider-Man IP the kick it needed to go to the big stage. Now, this one's going to get a bit bizarre, even for Spider-Man. Kosuke Kayama, Supaidaman is not even in New York. You get to see Spidey slinging around the streets of Japan now. That's right, Kosuke Kayama's Japanese Spider-Man became a pop culture sensation, known as Takuya Yamashiro. This one got famous for 2 things. One, he was just different. This guy was a motocross driver who was the son of a renowned astrophysicist who was also his world's Spider-Man. Plus, he had a sister and a girlfriend. I mean, that's not the typical Peter Parker story. He obtained his powers differently too. This time around, an alien imprisoned on Earth by Professor Monster, the big bad guy, communicated with him telepathically. While he made nothing of it, his sister, Shinko, and his girlfriend urged him to come check out the crash site of the alien's ship, the Leopardon. Now, Takuya caves in and goes, but he finds his dad, beaten and dying at the hands of Bukunyu, Monster's senior henchman. Uncovering his dad's secret, but also being too shocked to do anything, Takuya gets attacked by the Iron Cross Army, one of the main antagonists of the film, and falls into Garia's cave. Here, she gives him the spider bracelet and the spider extract, and that's how he gets his powers. The second thing he's known for is that crashed ship, the Leopardon. This thing is basically his version of a Megazord or a giant mech summon. It's literally just a gigantic alien robot spaceship that Supaidaman can summon whenever he wants to against the comically enlarged villains of the show. It was a spin-off that almost everyone remembered really fondly. It was a Spidey with X-ray vision, a giant alien robot, and ninja skills. What, and I really mean what was not to love? Interestingly enough, while Phil Lord, co-director of the Spider-Verse films, did confirm that his design had been made when asked about it on Twitter, he hasn't appeared yet, so let's hope Beyond the Spider-Verse gives him a shout-out, especially since he does show up in the Spider-Verse storyline in the comics. Also, let's be real, that opening was killer. Arguably one of the most iconic casting choices and live-action versions of Spider-Man, if not the most iconic, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man sits comfortably in the Superhero Hall of Fame. Spanning 3 movies from 2002 with a star-studded cast like Willem Dafoe, James Franco, Kirsten Dunst, Cliff Robertson, and more, it made its mark on the superhero genre for more reasons than one. While I'm sure you all have the plot of each film burned into your heads by now, what you might not know is that there was a 25-year-long legal struggle that went into making this film happen. It wasn't until Columbia Pictures, the guys behind the '77 film, gave the green light in 1999 for a worldwide release that this started to happen. With Sam Raimi as the director and David Koop in charge of screenplay, the gears were turning. And boy, did they turn. This movie shattered records. $826 million at the box office, the first movie to reach $100 million in one weekend, the highest-grossing superhero film of its time and the third highest of 2002, and more nominations than Peter has X's. There's nothing you can't say it hasn't done. But for all of its accolades, this movie had something special. The triumphant musical score that just sounded like a man trying not to give up, the overly yellow lighting that just made New York glisten, those incredible fight scenes, the webbed suit in all its glory, Willem Dafoe's iconic performance as the Green Goblin, and so much more. For a lot of people, it wasn't just a trilogy. From the moment Peter first put that makeshift mask on against the wrestler, to the final scene of him, Mary Jane, and a dying Harry, it was more than that. It was a piece of people's childhoods, and for a lot of kids, it was a superhero you genuinely looked up to and said, "Hey, I want to be that." It had you going phew-phew with your wrist as you hoped webs would come out.
You serious?
And it made every Spider-Man mask you ever got feel like a symbol. Well, except for Bully Maguire, but we don't have to talk about that. Like, ever. Even if we all tried that dance from Spider-Man 3 as kids. Now, originally before this film, we were supposed to get Spider-Man 4 in 2010, but that unfortunately got canceled. Instead, we had a reboot. A new cast of main leads, Mark Webb as the director, and Andrew Garfield starring as the iconic web-slinger, and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man. It actually was one of the few Spider-Man releases to touch on Peter's parents, which made it stand out, but the rest of the plot was pretty straightforward. This time, it had Dr. Connors lizarding out through the sewers of New York. We all know how that ends. Like, every time. The thing is, this movie highlights another aspect of the "with great power comes great responsibility." It's not just about superhero abilities. Peter technically helped Connors finish his research because he's the one who solves the algorithm that's stopping Connors' research into lizard-based regeneration from working, using his parents' research papers too. While Peter couldn't have known, he probably shouldn't have been that trusting with his parents' lives' work. The takes on this film were pretty controversial. Half the fans hated it, claiming that Andrew didn't look nerdy enough to be a shy, recluse Peter. The other half thought he was the only one that did Spider-Man right, and of course, there's the popular take of Tobey was the best Peter, Andrew was the best Spider-Man, and Tom's great at both. But there was stuff nobody could deny. Webb committed to being authentic to the comics. He reintroduced his artificial web shooters, which hadn't been done right, and the entire outfit was made from things like sunglasses for the lenses, with even the web shooters being made out of wristwatch parts. It was meant to reflect Peter still being a broke high school kid. Still, it was nowhere near as divisive as the second movie, which honestly had an incredibly messy production. The first draft was completely overwritten. It had plot points from all over the comics, like Gwen's death, originally caused by Norman, now instead being Harry going feral after the Green Goblin serum. Jamie Foxx's Electro was based on the Ultimate Marvel version instead of the classic that fans had been used to, and people felt pretty shaky about Dane DeHaan as Harry Osborn. Mary Jane was supposed to be in it too, but that got cut out as well. So while the movie did well on paper, grossing $709 million worldwide, it didn't get a good critical response. Critics claimed it was too suffocated with plot lines that each could have been their own film. Among the fans, it was popular to think that Garfield and Stone pretty much carried the movie, and Electro was incredibly forgettable, which he really shouldn't be.
Remember me.
My personal favorite is Andrew, though, and I think he does Peter Spidey the best out of the three. What's yours, especially after No Way Home? And speaking of No Way Home, while the TASM movies were going on, discussions between Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal, chairwoman of Sony, were being held to include Spider-Man in the MCU, which led to the licensing agreement announced in 2015. Pascal and Feige would be co-directors. Things seemed to be going smooth, and Tom Holland had revealed in 2016 that he got signed on for 3 Spidey movies and 3 solo ones. But soon, trouble hit. Disney and Sony couldn't strike any kind of deal. Genuinely, it seemed doomed. But this is one of the few times fan outrage saved the day. The riots were so strong that they actually settled on a deal, and the rest was history. The first canon appearance of Spider-Man in the MCU was set to be on its way in Captain America: Civil War. The Russos went as far as to say that they had no plan B, and that they envisioned the film specifically with Spider-Man in it. Peter's vigilante career was well on its way in this film. At least he had been going at it for 6 months before Tony came to recruit him, and his brief stunt in Civil War fed fans for years. Still, it wasn't until Homecoming and the 2 movies after that we finally got a real taste of Spider-Man in the MCU. The movies were solid. They used villains we hadn't ever seen, like Vulture and Mysterio. They found a new angle with the Tony-Peter, dad-son relationship, which honestly was the beating heart of so many scenes, and it had that grounded, friendly neighborhood charm to it. At least for Civil War and Homecoming. Then Infinity War took him from the streets to space. Despite some solid entries, it didn't feel like Holland's trilogy had the same oomph to it that Maguire's did, or the same buzz that Garfield's generated. That is, until No Way Home, which easily stands out as one of the best Spider-Man projects ever made. A multiversal story linking all 3 versions of the character against his greatest rogues. It was the closest we had to world peace, and it was the closest Marvel got to recreating Endgame's success. As we patiently await Brand New Day, it's great to remember that while Tom Holland's Peter Parker stands out in many ways, his dependency on Iron Man, his access to high-level tech early on, and his cast of side characters, he really comes into his own by the end of No Way Home. As a coming-of-age take on the iconic hero, it stands out as one of the nicest comfort watches you can have. With so many different versions of the character to pick from, there's a lot to keep Spidey fans content, but it never really feels like enough. Brand New Day can't come any faster, after all. But until then, we have plenty of amazing Spider-Man facts to go over and discuss, so while we wait for Peter's next adventure, catch up on all his lore and all things Marvel by staying tuned.